So, since I haven't recorded yesterday for the sake of going to bed as quickly as I can, and then in the end waking up way too fucking early and not being able to sleep in again, which, partly was my fault, to really be honest. But yeah, anyway, today I'm gonna record something. The problem is, I don't necessarily know what to record, so therefore, it's just once again gonna be some Reddit things. And I gotta be honest, often those Reddit episodes turn out to be one of the best episodes that I record. The problem is I often forget about the things that I'm talking about, which leads to me choosing a title that's really bad and one that nobody should be using, especially not me, but I still do so, and which leads to not a lot of views and actually just in general a ton of people not being interested in what the fuck I'm doing. But yeah, anyway, this is what I'm gonna do today, or what we're gonna go through today. So let's reload, not actually this one, but let's go to my main quote unquote page or whatever you wanna call it. So yeah, no, this is not what I want to do. This is what I wanted to do. Let's see what people are saying and what people are doing. Why is Stoicism so overwhelmingly male-dominated? Dominated. This is my perception, at least. If there is some truth to it, I think it is worth exploring reasons why it is true. At the risk of comparing apples to oranges, I hear a lot from women in Taoist or, say, existentialist discussions. I don't think the same thing can be said for Stoicism. Are there any women on the sub who could speak to this, or men who may have a clue? Could you guys be turned off by a masculine community that idolizes almost exclusively white men? Or does some element of your experience in society that we don't have, or vice versa, render Stoicism irrelevant? I mean, there's a bunch of very diverse questions here. Edit, some of you guys seem offended by me mentioning race, but I didn't really mean it as a jab. I just thought it was relevant since I was curious about inclusiveness, diversity in general. Well, I gotta have to be honest here. I think that, they truly do think predominantly about the white male. And, one could argue that it might be the exact same thing as it is in art. In art, at least, up to modern days, up to a specific, quote unquote, specific date or time period, it's been definitely 100% male dominated. 100%. It is just what it is. I mean, Leonardo da Vinci, Albrecht Dürer, I don't know, Botticelli, then Van Gogh. I mean, all those people we know are male. Of course, there is a ton of amazing female artists, and also often it's been a case that a female artist actually did the thing, but the male one just stole it and, sold it as his, which I do think might have happened in other topics or other categories or other, in other instances as well. I mean, not only in art, but definitely also in architecture or technical things, electronics, whatever it might be. I do really have a feeling that, this is not exclusively just tied to art. But the thing with art is, male people, men, have written the history of art. And they kind of favored males. They really didn't write about females, also due to their position in society and a bunch of different factors that really play into that. But it just led to women not being included, which doesn't mean that there haven't been any female artists, especially really back in the days in, ancient Greek or ancient Roman times. This is definitely not the case. There have been female artists. But the problem is they weren't included in big parts of history. As far as I remember, as far as I've learned it in school. And this is the reason why there isn't a lot of female artists at this point in time, especially from ancient times, that are very famous. Not as Leonardo da Vinci and Albert Dürer, Van Gogh, Monet, who's there as well, and so on and so on and so on. On the other hand, we could also talk about, and as I've been talking about, like the position that women played in society, unfortunately, they have not been playing a really big role back in the days. At this point in time, I'm actually very glad that things changed. Things, didn't turn 180 degrees, definitely not. But, it also should. I mean, I am a believer in in treating everyone, whether he or she is female or male, the same way. And, when it comes to jobs and when it comes to doing something like doing art, doing architecture and whatnot, that it comes up to how good you are. And not necessarily what gender you are and what race you are and whatnot. The problem, though, is that it might be just playing a role subconsciously, which is something that, isn't that easy to be controlled and altered and changed. And, but let's actually see what people are saying there. But I know, fun fact, I have had an episode around a female person in Stoicism. It was a very short one, which, might also be kind of an underlining of my thesis of, there have been amazing women in Stoicism, but they just haven't been quote-unquote recorded. Anyway, I think this is a great opportunity to remind everyone that obeying Redicats is one of the rules of this subreddit. In other words, please be civil to each other when discussing, which, by the way, was posted 10 minutes ago. Anyway, so woman here. Western philosophy is dominated by a white man. That doesn't really bother me. That's an historical fact. That is an historical fact. The men that wrote the original Stoic philosophy weren't necessarily privileged, and even for those that were, why does that matter when it comes to discussing logic and philosophy? I think one issue is that Stoicism is something you would have to seek out these days. I didn't find this up until I was going through my divorce and looking for some help with dealing with everything. And that was at the suggestion of an excellent counselor. I can't really explain why more women aren't here except to say that it isn't that popular among women because of how our modern Western culture views women and how they should act/behave. Well, I wouldn't necessarily say so. I mean, it is an interesting question though, which I kind of have overlooked because of whatever reason, that there is actually not that many people on this subreddit. As funny as it might sound, funny, but as strange as it might sound, but I assume there really aren't. I mean, this is, it is a statement as it is a question, quite. Anyway, same. So, woman here, Western philosophy is dominated by a white man. That doesn't really bother me. That's an historical fact. Well, I think it is an amazing statement by this person, by this woman, essentially, as well, because does it really matter? One could really focus on the fact that there is no women not that many women in history, in art history, in philosophical history, in whatever, but one could also focus on philosophy or history or art or whatever, And if you focus on that, if you focus on art, per se, then, does it really matter? Whether this person is female or male, then is it even, as paradoxical as it might sound, is it like the same thing as not being okay with it? If you understand what I mean? I mean, if you're bothered by that there is, not that many women in history, I kind of have to keep that thought and try to verbalize that, which I'm not able at this point in time. Anyway, same, and I don't think that this is a turnoff for many women. The problem is probably rather that while stoic qualities are often asked from women in practice in their traditional roles, they are all but actively discouraged from pursuing cold and logical subjects like Stoicism theoretically. My husband and I often joke that if we are asked or denominate what? That if we are asked or denominations, we could reply, the wife is a stoic and the husband is an utilitarian, and watch the confused looks unfold. Well, I can imagine that. So this was my thought too. Stoicism is more rigid and cold, while Taoism has an almost free-flowing vibe to it, which, well, anyway. I just want to say, I mean, not necessarily by the word or well, not necessarily by the word per se, you can tell that Taoism or Taoism or whatever is more quote unquote free flowing. Stoicism, just as a word, also as I'm thinking about it, sounds more rigid and cold. Even though, I mean, there is some preconceptions, there is some thoughts that I attach to this. It is, it's having a taste. Just because I know about Stoicism and I know about Taoism or Taoism or whatever. On the other hand, Taoism is something, well, everything that I'm about to say is kind of based on preconceptions about some things that I've once learned and I'm just now putting into this. Like, okay, I am kind of connecting Asian cultures and Asian places with Qigong, for example. And it also is free-flowing and it kind of looks smooth and it feels smooth and whatnot. So it kind of makes sense by assuming that Taoism or Taoism is also like just fluidy and free-flowing and whatnot, whereas Stoicism, just because it kind of needs to be the opposite, is it not? Well, above all, though, I think you're right. It has to do mostly with the social roles of women in the West, making Stoicism a less attractive avenue. But obviously, women can't benefit and flourish while utilizing Stoicism as well as men can. I mentor my nieces and nephews. I just want them to not take the moments in their young life so harshly. They all think, as we all did, that their lives are over if a negative incident in their social lives happens. etc. And I always wished I had a big brother or someone to teach me about Stoicism when I was their age. The nephews love it. They love hearing Aurelius quotes. They love hearing about the mindsets of the Asian philosophers who, to them, seem like real-life wizards, man, who can change their own world with the power of their mind. The nieces, on the other hand, do not take to it with as much fascination. I do not know why, but I usually resort to just showing them I am there for them. I find what works better for my nieces is just letting them talk and listening to their problems rather than trying to introduce Stoic techniques to them. The nieces seem a bit more level-headed and mature, so all they want is someone to listen to them, make them feel heard, and while the nephews benefit from the same thing, they also enjoy hearing about the Asian philosophy of Stoicism at the same time. Something to note is that this comment got downvoted once. Because of whatever reason, I don't know why. I could not have said it better. I studied Stoicism briefly in college, and I got a lot out of it. Always meant to come back to it at some point in my life, but I didn't until a mental health crisis 7 to 8 years ago had me pick up meditations. Well, I don't know why, and I think it is also a very interesting incident that, this person's nieces really, do not really seem to give a fuck about that, which, I don't know, like it is incredibly difficult to explain, especially I can't, because it is not something that I'm, very knowledgeable in, social behavior and behavior in general of people and whatnot, but I don't know, like the point with being mature and just having something to listen to, in terms of somebody just listens to you, sounds familiar, and I've kind of heard it before, like in terms of, dealing with women. And I really don't want to say that because it is connotated so badly saying things in that way. I feel like it just doesn't really feel right. But anyway, so it's been about not giving them advice, or not giving women advice, and telling them what to do and providing them with solutions for their problems, but rather just listening to them and listening to whatever they have to say and whatever they want to say. And this is quite the same thing. I mean, you are offering them a solution, a potential solution for their problem, but the only thing they seem to want to have is somebody to listen to, or somebody to talk to, essentially, as well. Which is interesting. I mean, well, it might be due to how we just work. I mean, there are different genders. It is what it is. I'm a male, somebody's a female, and obviously we are different. And probably we're also different in regarding cognitive aspects, which, might really be something that derives from the really, really, really ancient times of us being hunters and gatherers and whatnot. Possibly, maybe, I don't know. But it could also be something that society put into us very, quote unquote, recently. Nobody knows, but something that I think is that we are just different, which is not something negative, which is not something positive. It is just a fact. I believe that we are just different, which I might be seeing in such a way that, there is different, attitudes towards things, there's different opinions about things, and so on and so forth. And yeah, let's actually see if there's something else no. Wouldn't make any sense. Anyway, I'm gonna end the episode there. I wish you the best health of happiness and all success. Please stay safe and healthy. Bye-bye.